We're going to start this week off by talking about the director of photography. The director of a movie blocks the action and determines what we're supposed to be looking at. The production designer provides the background to the action, the visual context of the story. While the director of photography, or cinematographer, decides how we get the look the director desires by controlling the camera settings and movement so that what we see is framed, focused, and lit at an angle. The director of photography on a film crew has a department. The director of photography is the head of that department and hires everybody who works under them. So we have the first person who's in the hierarchy is the camera operator. And the camera operator basically handles the body of the camera. And that means they frame the shots. They're looking through the eyepiece. The first assistant camera handles the lenses, basically the glass. And what they do is they pull focus. They adjust the focus and they pull it and rack it and work with the focus and also clean and make sure that the lenses are always ready to go. The second assistant camera is the person who slates each shot. Basically has the number of the shot, where it's taking place in the script, so that when the editor edits, they can look at the script continuity log and see what the slate says and then put the movie together. The loader is no longer really a position that's really in use anymore because we're not shooting much film. And pretty soon we won't be shooting any film at all. So the loader used to take magazines of film and load it onto the camera, and then when it was the film was shot, they would then load it back for mailing to the processing house, and then put another magazine of film in. So basically, they would take the film that was shot and then would load it and mail it. Now, we don't have that anymore. We basically shoot on our hard drives, and the person who is in charge of making sure that the card that's recording the film is dumped onto a hard drive so that the editor can use it is what we call a DIT, or digital imaging technician. That's replaced the role of loader. Finally, the camera PA, the lowest person on the totem pole here, is a person who will do anything else that the camera team needs. It's usually an entry-level position. Now, the director of photography, because they're in control of the vision that the director wants shot, they are in control of the other two departments that supplement the camera people, the lighting department and the grip department. The lighting department, basically the gaffer here and the key grip. The gaffer is the chief lighting technician, hires the people underneath them, and the key grip does the same. And the gaffer basically follows the instructions from the DP, how that person wants it lit. They make sure it is lit. They take the lamps and then they rig them, and then the grips shape the light, either bouncing it or cutting it so that it works for the director of photography's approval. I thought with this talk that we'd focus on just one cinematographer, and I chose Gordon Willis, who recently passed away a couple of weeks ago, now famous American cinematographer. Here's a picture of him using a light meter, which is where, if you're on the set and you wonder where is the DP, the director of photography, you'll see that person probably walking around with a light meter if they're not at Video Village looking at the screen that shows the shot. So here he is measuring the light for the shot that he wants to get. Early on, I'd say with The Landlord, about 1970, this was one of his first movies. It was an experimental project in a sense because it was Hal Ashby's feature movie, or feature debut, and in it he's got that Vietnam era feeling where we were talking about class and racial conflict. And so what he's trying to do in his first film is contrast the classes and the races with a certain look that he's giving the movie. And so it's just, of course, I just don't want you guys to get confused, The Landlord, with this Landlord movie, which is a zombie horror movie. No, this is Hal Ashby's The Landlord with Beau Bridges and Lee Grant. And you can see an establishing shot here that gives you an idea of what Gordon Willis is up to here, because he's taking the the darker urban tones of the brownstone area of New York, so that we feel we're not in the upper class regions, we're in a struggling region, and we can see the background, and there's a lot of street life, people sitting on the stoop. And then our main character, Beau Bridges, shows up, and he's representing a different class, a different race. And so what Willis does is he puts pastel colors out here, pink and then a beige VW, and he's got the blonde hair and the pinkish tie. Everything is pretty anglicized and washed out, bland. And juxtaposing it with the background here as he brings up a toilet seat to his apartment, which wasn't furnished with one. So you can see in the background, again, the darker tones contrasted to him, and this is a better picture as we get close to the top. He's in the foreground, upper third, and we can see the street life is dominating that negative space of the film. We can see that they're missing a trunk on the car, so it looks like abandoned cars. And it tells you that this person's a little upper class, maybe wealthier than the people he's surrounded by. So we see the conflict, the contrast right away. But his darker frame that he's noted for, Gordon Willis is already starting to do, and then he's gone inside, and we get a better picture of the background here, where it's all pretty much muted tones, underexposed. And when we're in his apartment, then we're back into his kind of bland, innocent, light tones, kind of a flat picture. And when he's on the golf course, his society is again washed out, pastel, flat. But once he gets in conflict with his mother and everybody else, you can see that what Willis does is he likes to contrast the tones between the extreme whiteness with the brown earth tones, and finally the class conflict exemplified this movie with this absurd almost white Anglo contrast to his neighbors here in the neighborhood. So that was an early experimental film on the part that they were going through the kind of nervous energy and the critique that the Vietnam generation had when they were starting off with their features. The next movie I think we should look at that comes afterwards in his career, 1974, is A Parallax View, and he collaborated with the director Alan Pakula on this. But there was a trilogy of films they did together, and it was reflective of the times and this very paranoid view of the universe. It's kind of the paranoid trilogy of the paranoid thrillers. He had Clute and All the President's Men. And he did all three of these movies, but we'll look at Parallax View because this is as paranoid as you can get with Warren Beatty. And what he brings to this tale is he's a master, actually, at conveying the menace that he wraps in darkness. So he'll take he'll bathe things in a cool, almost a cruel light, almost sometimes blinding, and then he'll shroud it to give you that idea that there is a surrounding or pervading evil. And you can see here, he'll take a convention center, it's TV lighting, but it's surrounded in a darker frame, so there's certain menace lurking in the frame. When we go inside a building like this, you'll see that again. What he's doing is he's underexposing the people inside so that they're darker, they're more shadowy, and the outside's glaring bright. And he has this angle that he's tilted. It's almost that Dutch angle. It shows things a little off kilter. So we always feel that the reality's a little twisted. And here it's a great shot where Beatty is in the right third of the shot, but this blinding light of this concrete sweep it not only has a sci-fi menace to it, but it just takes up the whole frame, dominating it with this kind of menace there. And the rest, of course, bleeds into blackness. Here again, we have Beatty fading almost in the blackness like a Rembrandt, and then there's a light that's glancing off the floor that seems intrusive or foreboding. And so he's got that paranoid, dark shrouded universe going. And then when he gets to the climax of the movie, he goes in this Hitchcock mode where, of course, if you have people fighting on tall buildings, whether it's Statue of Liberty or Mount Rushmore, you always have this feeling of vertigo and peril. And in the background, you can see he's used a telephoto lens so that we get the river in the background and the rest of the city, but they're framed. And in this fight, it's very much like Sam Fuller did in Bamboo House. He in Japan preceded this movie, of course, but in the early '50s. But he has this tilt, this Dutch angle, and again the fight where they're duking it out on top of the building, a little tilted angle makes everything a little more saturated with the menace and vertigo.